Welcome to the 2021 relaunch of Supremacy at Sea World War II, the naval war game of strategy, operations and tactics. Hi, I'm Tony Glazebrook, the designer and developer of the original game and now of this sequel. So what is new in SAS version 2? All new campaigns of varied difficulty. Now Mac compatible as well as PC. Revised tactical fleet controls, many tweaks to the game engine and user interface. It's packaged as a single digital download, independent of all earlier SAS versions. Before these changes, Wargamer.com has twice rated SAS in its top 10 naval games of all time. And here is what a third reviewer on Wargamer.com has said. SAS has been created by someone with a passion for the subject matter and with real vision on how to recreate it in a computer game. Bottom line, this game, it is a work of art. If you are interested in the strategic aspects of naval warfare, then it's definitely worth having a look at. SAS 2.0 will be available by the third quarter of 2021 and will be very reasonably priced. If you are one of the dedicated players of the original game, welcome back! I hope to reconnect with you all in Europe, the UK, North America, Asia and Down Under. You stuck with the game through its early teething troubles, which were sorted after several updates and fixes. Thank you. In 2013, family issues forced me to step aside from further supporting the game. But now I'm involved again and more excited than ever to be relaunching SAS. SAS has some deep gameplay and broad scope. The best way to showcase this game is by taking you on a tour from woe to go, from creating a campaign, then playing the first turn, constructing ships and aircraft, organising fleets with patrol, convoy and other missions, and then rolling up your sleeves to get immersed in hour-by-hour tactics. You'll see not only how historically based the game is, and how accurate are the combat mechanics, you'll also see how you can play with history too, in plausible and fascinating ways. What if the Italians or French had developed aircraft carriers earlier? Or Dönitz had had all the submarines he'd wanted by war's outbreak? Or Raeder, all his huge Z-plan battleships? What if Japan had had better radar, a stronger economy, or had destroyed the US carriers at Pearl? And so on. There is a lot to see in this video. Here is what you will see. First, we'll create a campaign. From the Start screen, click Create Campaign, then Create New. You have 6 countries to choose from: Britain, the United States, France, Italy, Japan or Germany. Any can fight any in any theatre. Let's be conventional here though and have the United States against Japan. Select the theatre. Yes, if you wanted you could set this in the Mediterranean or Atlantic, but we'll go with the Pacific. Let's enable carriers, land-based air, but disable troops for now, just to keep this demo video simpler. And I'm going to go with own ship designs. It's cool and it's easy. The other options here are hypothetical ships, planned ships and historical ships only. Each option also includes the ones below it, so own ship designs gives you all of the possibilities. Various training levels are here, each out of 10 maximum. They seem about right, so I won't change them. At the top of the screen, the campaign is currently rated about even. Both have similar starting resources, production, trade and infrastructure. These numbers are resource points, or RPs. Everything in SAS costs RPs. 1 RP buys you 100 tons of ship construction, for example, or several aircraft. Each side has around 4,000 RPs to start off with, enough to build roughly a 400,000 ton navy, say 2 or 3 battleships, 2 or 3 carriers, or 8 cruisers, a bunch of destroyers and submarines, and enough merchant ships to run some convoys. That's a lot to manage, but it's smaller than the Japanese Navy early in the war, and much smaller than the United States Navy later. Note that the production and trade values are per turn. We are going to change these economic factors to make things more interesting and more historical. This is critical because victory in SAS depends on economic success, on growing your economy while relentlessly attacking the enemy, his convoys, navy, factories, ports and airfields. In other words, behind everything you do there is an economic purpose. The secret to making changes is behind this button. Here, for every port, you can set the levels of industry and raw material exports that are available there, as well as the port and airfield infrastructure. The details for doing this are in the help files, so I'll just skip ahead now and show you the changes that I made. And here are the changes. Note that the odds have been heavily revised. The computer has recalculated them. The calculation includes a valuation of all possible trade routes by the raw materials and industry levels at each end, and then divided by their distance. Why? Because shorter routes allow quicker turnaround times. You see, SAS has no scripted strategic goals. Instead, they are dynamically determined. The computer also calculates where trade route choke points are and their value, and this drives how the AI sets up convoys, as well as offensive and defensive patrol areas for you and the enemy. You will soon see this in action. Now, the revised starting resources greatly favour the Japanese, but production and trade heavily favour America over the longer term. These values are historical. US GDP was around 7 times that of Japan at this time, and Japan is now very reliant on resource-rich convoys from the Dutch East Indies, Borneo, and Malaya and Burma via Singapore. Now for the last step. Click on OK to proceed. Choose first which side is player controlled. During play you can change this at any time, but I want to run the first turn as the Japanese, so I set this now. The next decision is to choose your second in command, or 2IC. Each historical admiral has a strategy he prefers when advising you. A very aggressive admiral will go for a quick win, building big powerful ships and bombers suited to aggressive attack well inside enemy territory. Infrastructure and technology expenditure that is slow to bear fruit gets only a low priority. A very cautious admiral takes the opposite tack, investing more heavily in technology and infrastructure, and building more but smaller ships suited to defensive patrols closer to home, and a higher proportion of fighters to bombers. The other admirals have strategies in between. You will see how this works very soon. So choose wisely. You can replace him any time during a campaign, but it's better to start on the right foot. Okay, I'm happy with the aggressive Admiral Mikawa as 2IC, and the US is well placed with the cautious Ernest King. In early 1942, they had neither the ships nor aircraft to risk with aggressive moves. Now choose the length of each game turn. For now, I'll accept a monthly turn. The help files explain what the other choices mean. Now click OK, continue. Enter a name for yourself. Here I just choose something like Tonio Fujiyama, for no better reason than that I like Mount Fuji and Tony is my first name. Name the campaign also, and click OK, Create. The last step is to nominate your allies. The main help that allies give you is to make available their aircraft and ship designs for you to use. I want the US to have some Australian and British ships, just as a nod to history, so I select Britain. The Japanese have no useful allies in this campaign. Click OK, and that's it. You've created a new campaign from the ground up. Next, we will play the first turn of this campaign. From the SAS Start screen, click Select Campaign. Scroll down the top left list called Choose Game and select the campaign we've just created. Choose your side. Remember that I wanted to be Japan. I could now decide to be the United States, but I'll continue with being Japan. In Load File, click on Continue Game. You are now in your Admiral's office. There are 4 main tasks you must do every turn. These are initiated from your blackboard. Get your briefings, build new ships and aircraft, deploy them into fleets, and then run the turn. I'm going to skip briefings for now because nothing has happened, so no briefing is required. Click on Build. This takes you to the Build menu. The first thing is Infrastructure. Click on Infrastructure. Your 2IC has a plan to spend 20% of your resources on various infrastructure priorities. You can completely reject this, accept it, or change your admiral and therefore his strategy. Purely for the sake of demonstration, I'm changing strategy and going for a very cautious one. You see immediately that your new 2IC, Admiral Kurita, wants to spend twice as much, 40%, on infrastructure. Now I won't do this, I just chose him for demonstration. I'll now go back to the aggressive Admiral Mikawa. Now click Yes to see his plan. The plan is to spend around 1,000 RPs on training, intelligence, technology and port infrastructure. The spending will lift your levels in all of these a little bit. The new levels are shown on the right. I'm going to amend the plan. First, I'll cancel more training expenditure. Our training is high enough already. Now let's check the technology spend. Click on Priorities. You see your levels graphed against estimated enemy technology levels. We're way behind on radar. So I make the first priority radar and the second anti-submarine warfare or ASW technology. Click OK. Now I'm going to focus on developing home industry. Already Tokyo Bay is the high priority for expenditure, but the money, now going to port and defence levels, is better spent on improving industry. Going from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3 for your industry will have a big impact over time. So I'm making these changes now. The money saved from cancelling the training expenditure, about 100 RPs, I'm adding to the port improvement. Now click Commit Funds to implement the plan. That's all you need to do to build infrastructure. Now we come to building ships. Click Ships on the blackboard. Again, your 2IC has a plan for you to see. Before doing this, just for demonstration, I will show you what changing strategies does to shipbuilding. Click Change Strategy and select Very Cautious, then OK. Click Yes to see the plan. Looking at the list of ships he recommends, you'll notice that the fleet carriers are of the smaller type, with quite a few escort carriers. The battleships are relatively small and not especially fast. There are quite a few smaller light cruisers, and the small destroyer escorts substantially outnumber the larger fleet destroyers. The submarines are mainly of the smaller Kaiju class, and there are a good number of merchant ships, 17 in all, most of which are small. Let's see what a change in strategy will do. Close the screen, click on Scrap All, click Confirm, and click Finished. Now we're ready to start over again. Click Ships, click Change Strategy, select Very Aggressive, click OK and click Yes. Now we're seeing the list that a very aggressive 2IC would recommend. There are bigger fleet carriers, bigger and or faster battleships, only a few escort destroyers, and fewer but larger and faster merchant ships better suited for sailing unescorted. Note that the list may include some ships that in real life were planned only. Remember that we enable this option in the campaign creator. There is some randomness involved here. If you scrap the ships again and start over with the same strategy, the list may be a little bit different. Okay, now I'm going to show you another way again that's more fun. First we'll scrap them all again and start over, going back to our preferred aggressive strategy. But we're going to first decide ourselves what ships we want. So click No. We want to ensure that we have the Yamato battleship. Select Battle as the ship type, select Yamato as the class, and click Build. I could also add the Musashi here, but she wasn't ready until the end of 1942. I could add her now and set a delay in her commissioning, but I won't do this now. Instead, I'm going to add something that was planned but not actually built, the very interesting B-64 battlecruiser. which is a bit like the German Scharnhorst. Now let's demonstrate how easy it is to design your own ships. I'm taking the Yamato class battleship as the start. Now I'm going to increase the speed all the way to as far as I can go, which brings it to 33 knots. Notice that this change in speed has meant that the size of the Yamato, the new Yamato, has increased by 10,000 tons. Note that it is no longer the Yamato class, it's got its own new class name, and there is a new ship name that's been suggested. I could change the name of the new class, I could give it my own name that I preferred. Just for now I'm going to build it, click on build, and there we are, we have the new super battleship. But actually I don't really want it in my navy, this is just for demonstration, so now I'm going to scrap it. Now let's give ourselves a few key large fleet carriers. Let's say we have the Kaga, and we have the Shokaku and Zuikaku. Okay, they're the decisions that I want personally to make. I'll click Finished. Now, I can get my 2IC to use the remaining tonnage as he wants. Click Ships again. Click Yes to see what he does with the remaining tonnage. And here is the navy we will run with for the sake of this demonstration. Note that the ships mostly start at home because that is where your major shipyards are, but they can be freely redeployed to your other ports on the first turn so that things start out properly. Finally, we will build the aircraft we'll be starting the game with. Click Aircraft on the blackboard. Again, your 2IC has a plan. 20% interceptors, 20% escort fighters, 40% bombers, and 20% reconnaissance aircraft. You could change these ratios by changing the strategy, but I'm happy with this. Click View to see the production plan. He wants to build around 1,600 aircraft, costing over 700 RPs. You can change the overall number of aircraft and the RP expenditure, but the balance of types stays the same. Do this by clicking on the minus or plus buttons. In the list, you'll see lots of zeros. Lots of Kates, 230 of them at the moment, remember this number. And quite a few Vals, but fewer than Kates. There's also lots of very long-range, land-based Betty bombers, and smaller numbers of many others. The asterisk against an aircraft means that it is best in class. I want to increase the number of Vals for my carriers. Click on Val, click on Set Aircraft Specific Order, then increase the number to about 170. Click OK. Note that you now have around 170 Vals in the list, but the number of Kates has dropped, and they are now roughly equal. The Kates dropped in number because your budget only allows for around 1,600 aircraft in total, 40% of which will be bombers of all types. But this is fine. Your carriers can now have equal-sized wings of Vals and Kates. All these aircraft were historically available at this time. There are no fantasy advanced aircraft available to you. If you click on any, you can see that in the production notes there is an historically accurate date. But SAS would not be what it is if you could not also change this up, but still in a plausible way. How you do this is through researching aircraft technologies. Let's go back to the infrastructure screen briefly to see this in action. So we'll click Commit. Now, click Infrastructure again, click Yes, click Priorities for Technology. At the top of the screen it says Aircraft R&D Bonus 0 months. To get a bonus, make Aircraft Technologies a priority. In the priorities list over on the right hand side, choose a drop down list and you'll see Aircraft Technologies in there. If you were to select this, after a few turns of play you would start getting an R&D bonus. This would allow you to access advanced aircraft sooner than was the case historically. Before proceeding, it's time to save all our work. Click on the Games drawer and then click Save. Your next major task is to deploy the ships and aircraft you have just created into fleets. Click Deploy on the blackboard. If we click on Form Fleets, we get a message from our second in charge saying that he has a plan for you to see. You can reject it entirely by clicking no, accept it by clicking yes and then make some edits of your own, or you can change the strategy. I'm going to change the strategy to show you what this means in connection with forming fleets. Click Change Strategy. Over on the right hand side here are the selected missions. These are the default set of selected missions that go with an aggressive strategy. Now, we're not playing troops in this game, so he won't attempt to do either of those two missions. Then there comes a convoy, submarine offensive patrol, surface ship offensive patrol, offensive mine laying, and so on down the list. These are in order of priority, so when he comes to form fleets with missions, he will first attempt to satisfy the higher priority missions, and with the remaining ships, he'll get round to doing the secondary priorities. When you change a strategy up here to, say, very cautious, you will see that the list of selected missions changes. You can manually move missions across. If you don't want to do any reconnaissance, for example, you can move them into here. If you don't want to do any submarine defensive patrols, you can move them into here. And then your 2IC just concentrates on those that are in the selected mission list. Supposing you want to make defensive patrol your very first priority, even above convoys. You just move it up the list, and then your 2IC looks first to try to form defensive patrols before he gets around to doing convoys. If you click this Edit button, let's look at Convoy and click Edit. Here you see some convoy mission properties. You see this box here. The current properties for convoy mission involve a minimum of 1 carrier, minimum of 1 cruiser, and a minimum of 4 merchant ships. There are numbers set for optimum numbers of merchant ships and for ratios of ships. So the number of merchants per battleship, per carrier, per cruiser, per escort. All of these are default properties which can be changed. If we decide, for example, that we don't need a carrier in our convoy, down here we look at minimum number, carriers, and change it to 0. And so on. You can do that with all of these. So down here is where you set them, minimum number, optimum number, ratio. You can change all of the numbers in here so that the 2IC has a harder or easier job, for example, of forming convoys. Okay, I'm not going to go through all these now. I'll just click on Close to show you that for every one of these selected missions, there will be some preset parameters. Okay, now before I let the 2IC do anything at all, I'm going to click No and show you how you can manually form a fleet yourself. I click No, and it takes you to the wall map. We're going to form fleets manually by clicking here. Now we get another view of the wall map, a smaller view of the wall map, and over here we have the ports where all our ships are. So for example, the forward fleet at Truk has most of our naval ships. We've got the Yamato, Setsu, some heavy cruisers and light cruisers, escort carriers, heavy carriers, lots of destroyers and so forth, and submarines. Now basically you can create a fleet at that location, in this case Truk, and we call this First Mobile Force, which is something that the Japanese often did. If you click on First Mobile Fleet Truk, you see a set of controls have dropped down which allow you to manually set the fleet orders. Down here you see a new dialog box that lists all the ships in the fleet. By clicking on the map anywhere, you set the route. Currently it's showing 16 knots all the way through here. If you wanted to see the sequence of the hexes, we click here, the hour in which it first enters a hex, and so on. There are special orders here like bombard, assault, waypoint, load or unload cargo if it had merchant ships in it, for example. If there were mine carrying destroyers in the fleet, there would be another button here to set mine laying options. You can do everything manually that your 2IC can do, but with a bit more customization. However, it does take longer and is only recommended for advanced players. I won't do any more on this now. I'll exit from this screen and go back to the 2IC. Okay, we're going to call up the 2IC, click on Deploy, click on Form Fleets, and this time click Yes. He's now building his list of missions. It will take a few seconds. Here's a lot to consider. He's got to go through all of your ships, look at their capabilities, their speeds, where they are, what the mission parameters are in terms of ratios and optimums and minimum numbers of ships. He's building the missions in the priority order that you assigned. I won't go through all of this now. I'll take you to the point where he's actually built the missions. They're listed down here on the left. There's 1, 2, 3 convoys, an offensive patrol, an aerial bombardment, a surface ship bombardment, a couple of ready reaction fleets. These are ships which don't have currently a mission, but they sit in the port ready to sortie out to attack the enemy when they're close by. We have 1, 2, 3 submarine offensive patrols and so on. If we click on any one of them, we get the details. Here's a convoy leaving Singapore to Tokyo Bay by way of Manila. Here are the details of it, the cargo that it's loading and unloading. It's got 5 merchant ships and 5 escorts. If we click on See Map, we see the route of hexes through which it's going. Let's take another one. If we look at offensive patrol here, 15 naval ships leaving from Truk. We click on here. Here's the Yamato, 2 carriers, 2 fleet carriers, 2 cruisers and 10 escorts leaving from Truk. It's going to be patrolling some hexes. We look at the map. Here we are. Here are the hexes. These red crosses indicate the particular hexes that the fleet will loiter in for some time, waiting to detect the enemy and then charge in and intercept them. Okay, we'll look at another one, aerial bombardment, 12 ships leading from Truk. Click on here, we have the Setsu, that fast battle cruiser, 2 more carriers, a heavy cruiser and 8 escorts leaving from Truk. They're going to sail up and bombard Pearl Harbor. Here's the route of their hexes. They're sailing straight to Pearl Harbor, no mucking around. They're going to take up station somewhat north of Pearl Harbor and launch airstrikes against Pearl. Okay, I won't show you all of these details, maybe one more, an offensive patrol from submarines. Here we are, they're again coming out from Truk. They're really hitting the routes along here with those, they're the offensive patrol hexes that they'll loiter in, and then when they get low on fuel they'll return to, I think that's Tarawa. Remember that these red crosses here are selected by the computer automatically based on a dynamic calculation of where the enemy trade routes are, where the most valuable hexes are to wait and intercept on. This is all dynamically done and indicated that there's no static strategic calculations in the game, it's all dynamic. Okay, let's close that. Options here, I can simply accept them all as they are, or I can lock in some missions and then cancel the ones that have been unlocked, and with the remaining ships from the missions that have been cancelled I can go back and create my own manual missions if I like. So you have all sorts of options here. For the purpose of this demonstration I'm simply going to accept these missions as created by my 2IC, so I'm going to close this out now and return to the Admiral's office. The last deployment task that you need to do is to deploy your aircraft from a reserve pool onto airfields and your carriers. Your 2IC has already done this for you, and I'm not going to show you this step because it's basically administrative. It's very straightforward and there's no need to show you this here. So that's the end of the deployment part of your tasks. Ship and aircraft building and deploying is done. You leave the contemplation of your Admiral's office for the hot seat of combat. Click on Go and then OK to confirm that you really are ready to go. Start at hour 1, which is 1 AM on Sunday the 1st of February 1942. 0% of the turn has so far been calculated. The game is waiting for you to start it. You can run it hour by hour with this button or continuously with this one. If continuously, you can slow it down with this button or speed it up with this one. When it's running continuously, you can pause it with this one or hit the P hotkey. Here you see your first message. This is a list of all the ships that have launched at the start of this turn. You'll see many messages as the turn calculates. Here is a list of message types. Click on Options. Over here on the right are the minor events you can see. Aircraft operations, emergency fleet orders, departures, encounters avoided, launchings, cargo handling, refueling, repairing, mine laying. On the left are more major events. Surface battles starting and finishing, airstrikes, air interceptions, aerial ASW, submarine battles, bombardments, land battles. We're not having any of those in this game because there's no troops. Enemy fleet sightings. By unticking any of these, you're telling the computer not to show you those messages. I always have all of the major ones turned on and most of the minor ones. These ticks here also allow you to force the computer to stop when the event occurs. I usually do this for surface battle starting and finishing, for airstrikes, air interceptions, submarine battles, bombardments, and enemy fleet sightings. Enemy fleet sightings are very important because when you sight an enemy, that drives a lot of your tactical choices. Down here are your control options. We'll talk a lot more about that as the game goes on. It's very important. Okay, let's close this dialog for now. You can always bring it back up again by hitting the Options key. A couple more things before we get going. Show place names. You can have this on or off. That shows the names of the ports and other areas on the map. I usually have that off. And over here we can turn on or off the ship graphics. I quite like to have them on. The plus sign, which you can see here, is the center of the hex where the fleets are. If I zoom in, you can see, and I'll turn hexes on, you can see that in this highlighted hex, these fleets are all in that hex, and they're named here. We have RF, which means an empty reserve fleet. SF2, SF3, these are both submarine fleets. TF1, 2, 3 and 6, these are surface ship task forces. Over here we have CF1, 3 and 2. CF means convoy fleet. This naming system is one that the computer uses, your 2IC uses, when he sets up fleets for you. If you do it manually, you can call the fleets anything you like. Okay, let's start. We're going at first to go hour by hour. So here I go. Hour 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hour 6 we get our first message. It's an enemy sighting pointing to Pearl Harbor. It's a Coast Watcher report, and if I mouse over here I can see details of the enemy fleet that has been sighted. 2 aircraft carriers, not much other information, quite low reliability, but it's very current. It's the ages of this hour. Let's move along quickly again. Hour by hour still. Okay, on hour 13 we get some loading operation messages. Up here we can see 3 fleets involved. You can see the 3 pointers to fleets CF1, CF2, CF3. CF1 has loaded 5,000 tons and so on. The loading will take more than 1 hour to do, so we'll keep advancing through. The loading is still going on, as you can see, hour 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Loading has finished. By mousing over the fleet we get information in this dialogue here. Fleet CF3. There we are. It's currently carrying just over 20,000 tons of raw materials. It's got an escort carrier and 3 destroyers. The naval ships here have convoy escort orders, which means they accept any odds. They'll try and fight off any kind of enemy in order to protect the merchant ships, which will always run from combat. The 3 destroyers here have extremely aggressive orders, which means they'll charge in regardless, launching torpedoes, doing whatever they can to give the merchant ships time to escape. The light escort carrier Ryuho has very cautious orders, which means it too will try to run away if at all possible. The AI tactics are showing as none, which means there's no enemy fleets in the area that you need to worry about that would change the orders. Here we see fuel bunkerage. Fuel usage is critical for naval ships, but merchant ships have no effective fuel usage. They just run on diesel, and it's always assumed they have plenty. Over here are the damage statistics. No ships are damaged, and those ships have full ammunition. Close this now. Okay, let's run it continuously now and see what the first major event message will be. We don't have long to wait. It's hour 30 and already there are enemy sightings at Darwin and Fremantle, and an airstrike has been launched. Let's enlarge and drag the map. We mouse over Darwin. We see that there are 2 ships, a very small target, but a good excuse for a small land-based airstrike from Hollandia Airfield. You see the airstrike launched message at the top of the screen. There you see details of the airstrike. There's 4 zeros involved, and the target is the enemy fleet based at Darwin there, those 2 ships. You did not authorize this strike personally. The AI made the decision because the airfield has not been put under your direct control. We'll see later why and how you could control certain airfields or carriers yourself. Let's slowly advance hour by hour to see the strike in progress. 31, 32, 33, 34. You can see that the airstrike is moving towards Darwin. If you mouse over it, you get information about the strike. Let's continue on. 35, 36, and here we have our first airstrike. Mouse over the airstrike message. Clicking on the contents of the list here allows you to see the battle results screen. At the top of the screen you have a general description of the strike. Down here you can see that it's a land-based airstrike. Your pilots are veteran quality. There's 4 zeros. You catch the defenders partially unprepared. There's 15 fighters and an assortment of Blenheims, Buffaloes and Fulmars on cap duty or scrambling to intercept. You lose only 1 zero and shoot down 3 enemy aircraft. Your surviving aircraft all strafe the port facilities, doing minimal damage. Unfortunately, neither ship at port is damaged. Let's run continuously again. You see that the airstrike is returning. Your fleets are moving along their planned routes. At hours 40, 54 and 60, more fleet reports from Pearl Harbor, more enemy fleet reports. So far, no enemy at sea has been seen. Let's quickly check on one of our fleets, Fleet TF3. It's got bombardment orders, it's got 2 light cruisers, the Makuma and Mogami and 4 destroyers. It's still got very good fuel bunkerage, totally undamaged, all its ammunition. You see here the sequence of hexes through which it's moving, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and so on. It's heading towards Brisbane where it's going to do its bombardment, and then it's heading back out again. If we click on this button, we can see the speeds the fleet is going at. 16 knots all the way into Brisbane and 24 knots. It's hightailing it out of there after the bombardment. If we click again, we can see the times of day when the fleet enters a hex. You see that it enters the hex just outside the port of Brisbane at 1 AM in the morning. By design, the hours of darkness should help to shield the fleet from discovery and from air attack. Okay, we'll close that dialogue. Let's move on more quickly. Enemy sighting, ship refueling messages. These ships are refueling in Manila. More enemy sightings on hour 78. And at hour 103, we see our very first sighting of a fleet at sea, enemy fleet at sea. If we toggle over the enemy sighting, we can see it's an aerial report from the commander of fleet TF2. What's in enemy fleet TF1? Mousing over, we see it's those 2 aircraft carriers from Pearl Harbor. And the hexes that are coloured purple show the reach of your air power. Fleets with carriers, you see the strike radius and the attack points that can be delivered into all of the hexes within that radius. Here is the view from the other fleet. Mouse around, potential airstrike information is displayed in the box at the bottom right. Potential airstrike points are available into that hex from the carriers Kaga, Shokaku, Suikaku, Zuiho, and also the airfield at Wake. Each attack point is the equivalent of 100 kilograms of bombs. We have vals, kates and zeros. As we move further away, we've lost the ability to send zeros from Wake, and as we move further along again, the attack points are going down even though the aircraft are the same. This is because the bomb loads are now lighter because the range is further. Moving further again, only the zeros have the range all the way out to the target TF1, where we only have 42 potential points available from 21 zeros on the Shokaku and Zuiho. Those 42 points would represent the value of their strafing attack. And what are our fleets going to do? The hexes are each 96 nautical miles across, so you can see that enemy fleet TF1 is still some distance away, and you have seen that it is outside the reach of our dive and torpedo bombers at the moment. I'll disable air power maps now so that you can see the fleet movements to come more clearly. I could do nothing now, leaving it to my 2IC to send priority orders to my fleets to intercept or shadow or even avoid the enemy when he thinks it's advisable. But I will take charge myself here to show you what can be done. I also want to try to intercept enemy TF1 as soon as possible, before it might change course and retreat back to Pearl Harbor and come within the protective air cover that Pearl Harbor provides. Chances are it is on a defensive patrol around the perimeter of Pearl. Okay, I want to concentrate all 4 fleets on intercepting enemy fleet TF1. These decisions will override my 2IC until such time as I relinquish my control. First, my submarine fleets. If I mouse over SF2, you see the present offensive patrol route takes it through the enemy's position. But this is accidental. I want to get the fleet to intercept the enemy directly and follow him as he moves. Click to lock the dialog. Click Do TAC. Now click on Intercept TF1. OK. Let's do the same for the other submarine fleet. Close the dialog, move over the fleet. You see that currently its patrol hexes are going nowhere near enemy fleet TF1. Click to lock it, click on Do TAC, click to Intercept TF1, OK, and you see that immediately there is a change in the route to intercept enemy fleet TF1. OK, we'll close that dialog. Now I'll do the same for fleet TF1, the one with the Yamato in it. Mousing over, we can see where it's currently patrolling. I click to lock it, click Do TAC, click Intercept, click T1, and there we go, it's intercepting enemy fleet TF1. Good, close the dialog. Now we'll do the same for fleet TF2. We mouse over TF2, click to lock it. We see it currently has aerial bombardment orders and it has cautious attack orders. So we click to intercept TF1, and we're also going to adjust the rules of engagement for a bold attack instead of a cautious attack. Click Adjust ROE, or Rules of Engagement. Here we see that the fleet has a cautious attack. What this means is that the fleet will try to avoid battle or to disengage when the odds are worse than a certain amount, and the ships will take a reasonable amount of damage before retiring, more if they have very aggressive orders and less if they have very timid orders. Okay, we're going to change this to bold attack, and we'll see now if we highlight the Setsu that this means in combination with the bold attack fleet order, that ship will fight until it is damaged more than 60% or has less than 40% of its main ammunition left. So it's going to stick around in the battle for quite a while and only then cut and run. The destroyers all have very aggressive ship orders. The light carriers have timid ship orders, they will try to run as soon as possible, and the heavy cruiser Maya has aggressive orders. That looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to close that OK. And OK again. Alright, let's close the dialog. Now we're going to do something very important. We're going to take direct control of the 4 carriers in those 2 fleets. If we click on the Options button and click on Control Airstrikes from Carriers, and then we're going to select certain carriers for control. We're going to move across the Kaga, the Shokaku, the Zuikaku, and the Zuiho. That's those 4 carriers in those 2 fleets. OK, it's all done. Click OK. Alright, let's get going. Let's proceeding along. We see more enemy sightings, some signal intercepts, more enemy sightings. On hour 126 we get our first interesting message. This is from the commander of fleet TF2. He's telling us that the carrier Shokaku and Zuiho could launch a strike. It's in a promotable category, which means it promotes to pending strike on your authority. He hasn't proceeded with the strike because he thinks there are some issues. He can't get on a fighter cover or attack points. Down here are the aircraft you have listed, and down here the target information about the fleet and about the enemy aircraft in the hex as estimated by you. In that enemy fleet we think there are 40 Dauntless dive bombers and almost 40 Wildcat fighters. Notice that up here he's got some reserve bombers. He hasn't allocated 8 bombers or 15 fighters to the strike, or 6 ones from the Zuiho, probably because he wants to keep them back for combat air patrol defensive duty. Now, if we click on this once, we automatically promote the strike to pending, which means it will now go ahead unless I subsequently cancel it. If I click it again, we see the scissors icon means that the strike can now be directly edited in terms of the actual aircraft in the strike. If we close the dialog now, we get this message here, which allows us to directly assign aircraft to the strike. Let's put in all the available fighters, the Zeros, and all the available Kates. Let's check the target information again. Let's click OK, go ahead. You see up here an airstrike has been launched. Let's go slowly here because this is getting interesting. If we go forward 1 hour, we can see the strike has moved, moving towards the target. We have an air interception to report. The enemy aircraft in the air have intercepted our airstrike. If we click on this, we see information about the enemy interception. US Combat Air Patrol from the Yorktown, 12 Wildcats, good pilot quality. Japanese airstrike from the Shokaku, 15 Zeros, veteran quality. We shoot down 4 Wildcats for the loss of 1 Zero, but unfortunately his Wildcats got in amongst some of our Val dive bombers and shot down 10 of them. Let's close that screen. Alright, let's go forward another hour. And here, a report of our very first airstrike against an enemy fleet at sea. If we click in this line here, again we're taken up to details of the aerial battle. It's called the Aerial Battle of the Hawaiian Islands. Airstrike from the Shokaku, 14 Zeros, 30 Kates, 14 Vals. These are the ones that survived the interception by the Wildcats. On combat air patrol duty, he has 20 Wildcats, 37 more scrambling to intercept. I make a dive bomber attack by my Val dive bombers, an attack against the Minneapolis, a bomb hit. One of my aircraft's damaged by anti-aircraft attack, one downed. We get a penetrating bomb hit on the Yorktown, which is critical. Over here you can see the Yorktown is shown as having significant damage. This little green bar here means that we estimate that the Yorktown has now lost 6 knots, up to 6 knots of speed. We make a low-level bomber attack with our Kates. One near miss on the Minneapolis. Near misses can still cause damage, and we get a penetrating bomb hit on the Lexington this time, causing moderate damage, estimated moderate damage. More aircraft are downed by anti-aircraft fire. Our fighter attack, our Zeros go in and strafe the Lexington and Yorktown. One's downed by ACAC, one's damaged. In total, we lose a lot of Kates, 26 to fighters and 2 to ACAC, 12 Valve fighters, dive bombers, 10 to fighters, 2 to ACAC. 13 of our Zeros are lost against 15 Wildcats for the enemy. Their anti-aircraft fire has been pretty effective, but most importantly, we have done damage, significant damage to the Yorktown, moderate damage to the Lexington, and moderate damage to the Minneapolis. Okay, let's keep going, but first let's prune down the number of messages we're getting, because we're getting quite a lot, and we've seen some of these. So I'm going to do undo cargo handling, refueling, ship launchings, emergency fleet orders, and I'll keep that, aircraft operations, enemy fleet sightings I'm going to take out. I'll keep all of those in, I think, for the moment. That'll prune some things down. Okay. Turn that off. Let's get going. Let's see what the next major event is. Okay, down here we have a bombardment. This is our fleet TF3 that was sent in to bombard Brisbane. If I mouse over, we can see its shell storages and docks. Damage to port is rated as extremely heavy. That's probably an overestimate though, but our fleet has scored some damage in the process. If we mouse over our fleet, we can see some damage to the fleet now. The Makuma has very light damage, the Mogami's got a bit more, and a couple of destroyers are very slightly damaged. This is as a result of defences from the port infrastructure. Okay, let's close that. We'll go back up to here because this is where the main area of interest is, and let's keep going. Another airstrike down here. Let's follow this down and just see what's happening here. Okay, this is an airstrike, and there's 2 more airstrikes en route here. 10 fighters from the airfield at Layer returning home, and 12 fighters from the airfield at Rabaul are incoming to Townsville. We have an airstrike on Townsville. A fighter sweep over Townsville, 12 Zeros. There is a mixture of Blenheims, Buffaloes and Airacobras and Sea Hurricanes defending. They're scrambling to intercept. We lose 2 Zeros, they lose 10 fighter aircraft. We do minimal damage to the port infrastructure. Okay, let's go back up here again to our main theatre of interest. Okay, let's keep going. Air interception, we won't follow that lead. Another airstrike on Townsville, more interceptions down here onto Townsville. Let's keep going, focusing on this area here. Okay, we have an aerial anti-submarine warfare attack. An enemy submarine has been forced to dive. We won't follow that through. More air interceptions off near Townsville. You see our fleet TF1 has been moving away to the northeast. Our fleets that are trying to intercept it are following it through. If I pause it here, it is paused. You can see that our submarine fleets are still on task to intercept fleet TF1, as is our Yamato fleet with Yamato in it. Let's keep going. More enemy sightings, more airstrikes down in Townsville probably. Okay, we have another promotable airstrike, this time from the Kaga and Zuikaku. Let's do the same thing. Let's just send them in. Send in the clowns. Okay, we'll send in all of the Kates, all of the Vals. The target information can be seen here. It's enemy fleet TF1. Let's go ahead. Okay, there is the airstrike in the air. 60 bombers and 15 fighters from the Kaga. Target enemy fleet TF1, which is in that fleet. But the yellow colour of the TF1 icon indicates that our intelligence is a little old, and so this strike may not find it. Okay, let's keep going. Airstrike down in Townsville again. Okay, more pending airstrikes from the Kaga. We'll send it in again. We'll send in all of our remaining Kates and Vals. Just go for it. Okay. And what I'm really hoping for is that we're going to get a surface engagement. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off manual control of airstrikes and just concentrate on seeing if we can get a surface engagement. So here I go to options and I just tick this one here. I just untick that. I don't even have to unselect the carriers. I can just do it this way. This is a global way of controlling or not controlling airstrikes. Okay, here we go. It looks like enemy fleet TF1 may have escaped. The information on that fleet is now a little old. It's quite a while since we've actually spotted it. Airstrike, another airstrike, which we didn't authorize. Remember, it was done. This has been done automatically, but it's a good one. You can see that the Walker has been sunk. It's an airstrike from the Kaga. 15 Zeros, 27 Kates, some Wildcats scrambling to intercept. Torpedo bomber attacked by a number of Kates. We have a torpedo hit on the Walker, the destroyer. A number of our aircraft have been damaged by ACAC. We've done some fighter strafing as well. They lost 15 Wildcats, we lost 6 Kates and 4 Zeros, but most importantly we sunk one of their destroyers. Let's keep going. Another airstrike, or is that the same one? No, that's a different one. Airstrike from the Zuikaku. Okay, one Wildcat only left to defend. Looks like it may have done minimal damage. Ah, okay. I'll just pause it here. Now we have our first sighting for enemy fleet TF1 in quite a while. The sighting is 4 hours old. Our fleets over here, which have been waiting to intercept enemy fleet TF1, now have a new track to intercept enemy fleet TF1. You can see that their routes will now try to re-engage with enemy fleet TF1, which is exactly what we wanted. Alright, let's keep going. You'll see that there's an enemy fleet CF1, a convoy that's also been spotted on the northwest, but we're going to keep following fleet TF1 because that's got the carriers in it. Our fleets are following TF1 down in a southwesterly direction. Let's hope we get a surface engagement. It's moving on again. I'll just pause it here. Fleet TF1 is very effectively evading our interception by our fleets, probably because they've got aerial reconnaissance from Pearl, but also and from their own carriers, but they've also got relatively sophisticated radar compared to the Japanese. We cannot hope to intercept. Let's keep going. We're sending out more airstrikes towards TF1. You can see those airstrikes moving on the map. TF1 is running away as fast as it possibly can. More airstrikes on Fleet TF1. Maybe that our aircraft managed to finish off the fleet. We've got 2 airstrikes here. We click on the first one. Whoa, the Lexington is now sinking. We've got 9 zeros, 24 Kates and 6 Vals attacking, a near miss on the Minneapolis, a near miss on the Astoria, 4 bomb hits penetrating on the Lexington. The Lexington is sinking. We have some of our aircraft, 2 torpedo hits as well on the Lexington. We lost 7 Kate aircraft, all to enemy aircraft. If I click on this button, we'll see the second airstrike. The second one's from the Zuikaku. Again, zeros, Kates and Vals. We get a near miss on the Minneapolis. 2 more bomb hits on the Lexington. And we lose 7 aircraft, all to ACAG. More airstrikes. This time it looks like on enemy EF1. When a fleet has the name EF1, that means the computer has taken it out of attack. It's sending it home because it's too damaged or out of fuel or whatever. In this case, probably too damaged, and it's on its way back to Pearl or the closest port for repair or refueling. Nevertheless, it's taken an airstrike. Let's have a look at it. Okay, again, it's another strike on the fleet with the Lexington. Okay, let's just keep on going and see what transpires over the next few hours. It looks like we're going to be unlucky and not make that surface battle interception. We're now calculating through to the end of the turn. You can see down here we're calculating through to the end of the turn without further major incident. Here we have a return to base. We have 2 heavy cruisers which are both low on fuel, the Takeo and the Chokai, and they're returning to Tarawa, which is 7 hexes away. I'd rather send them to truck, however, so I'm going to send them to truck. They're being supported by a number of destroyers. Okay. And that's the end of the turn calculation. When the calculation finishes, you're taken straight to the briefing report of what has just happened. It's detailed, and we'll be looking at this next. But before moving on, please note that if you were disappointed, as I was, not to be able to show you a surface battle, I will showcase a major battle from a different campaign before this overview is finished, so hang in there. Immediately after a turn is calculated, you'll see the situation report open on your desk. It summarises what has just happened and how your strategic situation now stands. There are 5 main sections with appendices. Hyperlinks allow you to jump ahead, or you can just scroll on down through. On the right, there is a video that you can watch of the last turn, allowing you to replay key events. We'll see this replay in action a little later. Let's look at the report. The report reminds you that your situation is quite difficult. Economically, you are already struggling. The big investments in infrastructure have set you back, although they will repay you over time. And your production and trade gains are only just paying for the costs of war so far, mainly in refueling so many units that were at sea last turn. The details are all in the economic balance sheet, which we won't explore here. In real life, the availability of oil fuel suitable for naval ships was a very big restriction on Japanese operations. Alright, let's look at the operational overview. Operationally and tactically, however, you had quite a victory. You lost no ships and suffered only minor damage to the few ships that bombarded Brisbane. But you sank the USS Walker, and you know from the turn calculation that 2 US carriers are heavily damaged, as is the cruiser Minneapolis. These will be costly and time-consuming for the enemy to repair. You lost about 104 aircraft, the equivalent of about 30 RPs. The appendices have information on enemy ships. This information will sometimes be inaccurate, but it will grow and improve over time. A major section is the action reports by battle. Here are listed all the combat engagements from the last turn. It was quite the month. You made 21 airstrikes against the enemy, some bombardments, and there were 5 air interceptions by the US. These listings have hyperlinks to all the battles, so you can review and relive those moments. Let's quickly do this now. We click on airstrikes. We click on any one in particular. You can see the battle details. If you click up here, you can cycle through all of them, forwards or backwards. Here's one from the carriers where we sunk the Walker, for example. Okay, let's close out of there. Another very useful appendix is the infrastructure list. If you open this, you can see that at Tokyo Bay, for example, the investments you made in industry are starting to improve the levels of industry, and this is going to have an increasing impact over time on your production and trade values. Okay, let's close out of the situation report for now. You can re-bring it up anytime by clicking on briefings. Another great source of information is the wall map. If you click on it, you get a big stylized view of the theatre. You have your own ships listed and the enemy ships listed. If you click on any of these, it shows you visually where your ships are, the same for the enemy. Of course, the enemy information can be in error or out of date. If you click on your own ship roster here, you get larger text view of all of your ships and their current status. You see that the Mogami here is still moderately damaged from its bombardment. We click on it, you get details of the ship, how long it's going to take to repair. The blue segmented line at the top of the ship details there shows its current efficiency rating. Okay, let's close out of that. If you click on Own Ports, you get key abbreviated information about the RPs and number of aircraft at all of your ports. You can get the same view for the enemy. If you click on Own Air Power, you'll see here a similar view to what you saw during turn calculation. If we drag this box over here, you'll see it more clearly. This shows you the reach of all of your aircraft from your carriers and airfields as at the end of the last turn. If you choose to do the enemy air power, you'll see something similar. Of course, these are estimates for the enemy and are subject to error. If you click on pop-up details, when you move your mouse over one of your ports, you get this kind of detailed information which you can scroll on through. Okay, that's as much as I want to say about the wall map for the moment. Let's close out of there. The other tool you have is the turn replay. Since we have just seen a lot of the action from the Japanese side, let's use the replay tool to quickly see how the US fared. This is a very neat ability in SAS. You can change sides at any time except during turn calculation. Okay, click the game's draw, then click load. This takes you to the screen to select a campaign and a side. If we select the same campaign, this time we select the United States and continue. We are now in the US Admiral's office, ready to play as the Americans, building and deploying for turn 2, letting the computer now be the Japanese. We won't do this now, I just wanted to show you a couple of things. First, the situation report. Click on Briefings. Click on Introduction. You'll see that the US is also suffering economically. The main thing I wanted to show you is the ship roster. If we open the ship roster, here are the lists of American ships, and you'll see that the Lexington is repairing. If we click on here, we see that the Lexington is very badly damaged. It's going to take 18 turns or 18 months to fully repair at a cost of 50%. That cost is in terms of the initial construction cost. In other words, it's going to take half the initial construction cost to now repair it. The Lexington will be out of action for a long time to come. However, the Yorktown is only 1 month away from being fully repaired. The Minneapolis, likewise, is only 1 month away from being fully repaired. The American shipyards have done a sterling job in very quickly repairing the Yorktown and the Minneapolis. This is partly because American ship construction techniques are more advanced than the Japanese. The Japanese could invest in this area of technology, but they probably have too many demands on their scarce resources. Let's close the ship roster and look at the turn replay. Here we see a screen that looks very like the turn calculation screen, but it won't be in as much detail. This is a replay of things that have occurred. You don't have the ability to go in and change anything. If we click on the options button, you see that there are all the same kinds of event messages which you can turn on or off. You can stop on the event messages. We're not going to do that. It'll take too long. We'll just untick that. You can see that there are controls for running forwards as well as backwards. You can enlarge the screen, zoom in and zoom out. All right, let's have a look at things from the American side for turn 1. They're getting lots of their own event messages. You see CF3 convoy fleet starting to move out of Townsville and Brisbane, submarine fleets coming out of Brisbane, coming out of Fremantle. We see their Task Force 1, the one that the Japanese tried to nail in surface battle. A convoy fleet here, CF1, is heading up in a northwards direction. A US fleet TF2, which the Japanese never saw, is making a very bold move towards the Japanese shipping lanes, probably a reconnaissance mission. We see submarine fleet SF2 moving through, trying to attack the trade routes between Borneo and Surabaya and Singapore to Japan. Okay, I won't show any more. This is just for demonstration. If you played it through completely, you would see that the US fleet TF1 managed to evade surface battle through a combination of excellent intelligence on Japanese fleet movements combined with a very capable computer-controlled AI that constantly rerouted the fleet away from danger. Notice that the replay can be run forwards as well as backwards, which is a bit cool. Let's run it backwards. You can see the turn replay moving backwards, or we can stop it and run it forwards, or we can stop it and go to a particular hour if that you might be interested in. Okay, enough about the replay. And now, finally, we will see a surface ship battle from another demonstration campaign. I'm adding this in here just to demonstrate what surface ship battle looks like, as we didn't see any in the first turn of the Japan versus US campaign. What you will see is taken from a simplified Mediterranean campaign, where there is no air power on either side, just surface ships and submarines. We pick up the action at hour 60 as seen by the British. Italian fleet TF2 has just been sighted sailing out from their major naval base of Taranto. 1 battleship, 2 cruisers, 6 escorts, travelling southeast at 16 knots. The British fleet of TF1, with the old battleship Valiant, 2 cruisers and 7 destroyers, has just been ordered to intercept. You see the line there, AI Tactics, intercept enemy fleet TF2. It was issued by the computer, the British 2IC. The British player had not yet put fleet TF1 under player control, and it looks like there was no need to because the AI has quickly responded anyway with some priority orders. Mousing over the priority fleet orders message shows that 2 submarine fleets on patrol, SF2 and SF1, have also been ordered to intercept. If we mouse over British fleet TF1 again, you can see that it has bold attack orders. Its orders are to go in and bombard Taranto, but it's now been given the AI order to intercept enemy fleet TF2 instead. The ship orders are a mixture of very cautious, and extremely aggressive. These orders have been given by the AI, and there is a purpose to this. The most valuable ship, the Valiant, wants to be able to stay at medium to long range, trying to preserve its immunity zone while still making effective hit percentages. That's what a cautious order means. The extremely aggressive destroyers are on a sacrificial plan to charge in with torpedoes and guns, whilst the light cruisers and a couple of the destroyers will stay back, ready to defend the Valiant. The British player does not know the Italian fleet's rules of engagement, but could guess they will be quite cautious. As the British player here, I am going to change the rules of engagement to be more aggressive, partly to show you what effect this will have, and partly to do maximum damage to the Italians. In SAS, you do not control individual ships once in battle, but these rules of engagement nevertheless very powerfully influence what they do. I click on Do TAC and on Adjust Rules of Engagement. Let's look at the Valiant first. You see that it has cautious ship orders. What this means is that it will fight until it is damaged more than 60% or has less than 40% of its main ammunition. The ship will withdraw from battle along with the rest of the fleet when the overall odds become too bad. That's not going to happen here because the odds would need to be greater than 2-1 in the enemy's favour. But until it withdraws, it will attempt to stay at an effective range from the enemy, striking a balance between minimising the damage it receives and maximising the damage it can do. It will try to stay within its immunity zone against the enemy shell fire, if it has one. This is your standard cautious ship order. Now, Admiral Cunningham in World War II was famed for his aggression, often wanting to get into close-range battles, so I'm going to mimic this here. Let's change the order to aggressive. Let's look at the changes this means. It's now going to fight until it's damaged more than 80%, so it'll stick around for longer, and until it withdraws it will try to get close to the enemy to maximise the damage it inflict, whilst manoeuvring to lessen somewhat the damage it receives. I could go completely crazy and go extremely aggressive, but that's a bit suicidal, so I'll just go aggressive for the Valiant. I'll make the two cruisers, which are currently on very cautious orders, I'm going to make them aggressive. And I'm going to make all the destroyers extremely aggressive. Most of them are, but two of them aren't. I'm going to make them all extremely aggressive. This means that they'll go in as close as possible, firing guns and torpedoes, and not try to let the enemy escape at all. Okay, that's done. The other thing I will do is I'll make sure that Fleet TF1 is going to intercept TF2, rather than leave it to the AI to manage all of that. There we go. If I close and then reopen the dialog, you'll see that the changes in ship orders have been made. We're now under player tactics to intercept enemy fleet TF2. Okay, let's run it. Here we see fleet TF1 moving in towards enemy fleet TF2. And here on our 88, we have a new surface ship battle. We'll continue with the calculation. And here on our 91, we see now our fleet has received a lot of damage and is low on ammunition and is now having to withdraw from battle. The Mohawk's 2 damaged, Jervis 2 damaged, Janus, Griffin 2 damaged, Valiant low on ammunition, and the original fleet mission, which was to bombard Taranto, has been cancelled. That's okay, that's what I expected. So I'll click OK here, and now on our 92 we have a surface battle to report. If I mouse over this here and click on here, I can see the battle results. Okay, here is the battle results screen for the Battle of the Golfo di Taranto. The computer names these battles. It went for just over 4 hours between our fleet TF1, Italian fleet TF2. Here's a description of the weather. Now, the damage to all the ships is listed descriptively. Trivial damage, largely wrecked, sunk, etc. Over here, largely wrecked, sunk, extensive damage to the Valiant. But as well as a description, you also get graphic indicators. These orange bars here refer to superstructure damage, red bars are hull damage, blue is flooding, green is speed loss, 4 is the turrets hit. This is ammunition usage in 10% increments, and over here is the repair cost, again in percentages of the initial construction cost. Down here you'll see the Mohawk. It will cost almost as much to repair as it would have originally to construct, so that may be one to scrap and just start all over again. However, we've only lost 1 destroyer compared to 2 on the Italian side, whereas these are in 10% increments or 3 knot speed increments. For the Italian ships, we don't have as much information there, the enemy. We just estimate. So the estimates of flooding and speed loss and so on are in 33% increments or 6 knot increments. You see that the Conti di Cavour is largely wrecked. It's had quite substantial flooding, and the Valiant extensively damaged but no flooding. Generally speaking, there's more flooding on the Italian side, apart from the Juno that was sunk, than the British. That reflects the fact that British training is a little higher. Their shipbuilding techniques, their compartmentation in the hulls is also a little bit better. So the flooding is the result not only of the amount of damage done, but also how that is being controlled. Okay, let's click on Replay Battle. This is where it gets interesting. Okay, now this is a battle replay screen. You can't go in and change anything. The distance between our ships and the enemy ships is stylized. It's shown as a two-dimensional distance. They're not a three-dimensional space. It's a two-dimensional space here. And the top to bottom spacing doesn't mean anything at all. It's just a way of separating out the ships so that you can follow what's going on. We have our ships listed here, the Italian ships listed there. If we move forward 1 minute, this battle is done minute by minute, so there's over 240 time slices of action. And the combat accounts for every torpedo hit and every main and secondary gun hit. Everything is accounted for, and it's all dynamic. Now, if I click on damage here, you'll see that neither ships on our side or the Italians are carrying any sort of damage. Here we get an indication of the orders by clicking on the orders button here. The Valiant is trying to close directly to get to best gun range. So is the Conti di Cavour, as you might expect. Ships on both sides are trying to close in order to do damage. Some of the closing tangentially, sort of not directly. Others are closing directly, like the destroyers here and like the Italian ships here. Now, if I just go forward here bit by bit, down here we get indicators of when a torpedo or shell hits. So, and over here, if we click on damage, bit by bit we will start to see some damage accumulating. I'll speed this up a bit so you can see this in action. There we go. Now you can see these little flashes on the screen are visual indicators of when there's a hit. Over here, the Italian ships are starting to take some damage. The British ships, only one ship has taken any damage so far. You can stop this at any time, and you can go back to the orders view. It's the Mohawk here, which has taken some damage. And if we look at targets here, if we click on targets, we'll see which ships are targeting which ships. Here, the Conti di Cavour is targeting the Mohawk with its secondary guns, and of course it's targeting the Valiant with its primary guns. Over here we've got the Valiant targeting the Conti di Cavour with its primary guns, and the Alvise Catamosto with its secondary guns. Let's keep going. Oh, this ship here is really taking some damage here. If we go back to damage view, we can see that the damage is starting to build up on the Italian side. They've had turret hits, they've lost some speed, they've had some hull hits, lots of superstructure damage, lots of hull damage here on this ship here. The British ships are faring, now they're starting to get some serious damage done to the British side. At some point we're going to start to see some blue bars, which indicates flooding. If I speed it up even further, now you can zoom out of the action if you want, so that you get all the ships in. Here's a blue bar here. There's a bit of flooding now on this ship here, which if we look at the orders view is the Picafetta. Go back to damage view. All right, I'm not going to take it all the way through. I'll just pause it here and take it right to the end. There we go. So remember that flooding is progressive minute by minute, and that flooding rate depends on not just the amount of damage done, but on the damage control and compartmentation. So here you can see that these two ships basically have been sunk. The Pigafetta and the Vivaldi are both sunk. Over here the Jarvis, which is at 100% flooding, has also sunk. If you finish with it, you just close it by clicking here. So that's the battle replay screen. It gives you a minute by minute, shell by shell, torpedo by torpedo view of the damage, where the ships are moving, how they're moving, who they're targeting, what damage they're taking, and so on. But remember that it's a after effect replay, not a dynamic go in and control the targeting of ships. Your tactical control of surface battle is by way of controlling the rules of engagement for the fleet before the fleets get into battle.
Okay, we have largely come to the end of this video. There have been several important things that I haven't been able to touch on so far. One of the more important ones are airstrike preferences. These preferences are policy restrictions that control how your commanders at your airfields and on your carriers, how they set up airstrikes, what the minimum target value for a strike should be, what the minimum bomb weight and optimum bomb weight should be, what height to bomb from, what percentage of fighters should be on cap duty, what the ratio should be of your fighters to your bombers or to enemy fighters, what the maximum age of intelligence for enemy at sea or in port should be, whether to enforce a preferred radius for your strikes, which means your aircraft must carry their maximum bomb load, which means they have reduced radius, and so on. These can all be changed and set to values that you prefer. We haven't really been able to cover all of that.